Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this Margins Meets event. My name is Susie Q. Smith, and I work with The Word, a nonprofit organization working to build a publishing community that will fight for inclusivity. Our mission is to promote voices from underserved communities and diverse backgrounds, to honor the stories of those who have faced adversity and injustice, and to provide a sanctuary space where these groups will see themselves in literature. My role with The Word is to direct the biannual Margins Conference. Launched in 2020, Margins was created by and for people on the margins, promoting the inclusive representation of experiences in literature for communities who have historically been excluded. Margins is a biannual conference, book fair, and literary festival happening in Denver and online August 5th through the 7th, 2022. Margins brings together writers, storytellers, and wordsmiths at all levels of experience to talk about the many approaches to storytelling, visioning and creating, education, inclusion, advocacy, organizing, and perhaps most importantly, building community. To learn more about how to get involved, visit our website at www.thewordfordiversity.org. We are so excited to welcome our guests today, Tanaya Winder and Bobby LeFebree. Each of our guests will offer a reading of their work, followed by a discussion about poetry as a tool for connection, community impact, healing, wellness, spiritual growth, and whatever else we decide that it is tonight. I'm going to let our poets tell us. So we'll be dropping links in the chat for their books, their websites, their projects, their social media. So if you have questions, also please be sure to put those in the chat. So for now, let's meet our guests. I'm going to introduce you to our first poet reading this evening, Bobby LeFebree. Bobby LeFebree is an award-winning writer, performer, and cultural worker, fusing a non-traditional, multi-hyphenated professional identity to imagine new realities, empower communities, advance arts and culture, and serve as an agent of provocation, transformation, equity, and social change. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Huffington Post, The Guardian, American Theater Magazine, NPR, and Poets.org. In 2019, Governor Jared Polis named LeFebree Colorado's 8th Poet Laureate, making him the youngest and first ever person of color to be appointed to the prestigious position in the program's 100-year history. Without further ado, welcome, Bobby LeFebree. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Susan. I'm very, very well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been quite the week. We were talking a little bit before we went live, and poetry is always that thing that we go to not only as poets but as people to help make sense of things. And I was reading a book last night by one of my elders, Trinidad Sanchez Jr. He has a poem that's called "Let Us Stop This Madness" about gun violence, and this was 80s, maybe the 80s and the 90s that he was talking about this. So poets always have their finger on that pulse. And when Trinidad would sing, would do that poem, he would start with the song of the title. So I just want to start with that. Then I'm just going to read poems for 15 minutes straight.
Let's get into it.
Let us stop this madness. Let us stop this madness. Let us stop this madness. A map of the world hangs upon my wall. Its head is bowed, its heart is heavy, love whimpers softly. There's a stench that permeates the room. I caress its topography, its gaping wounds transfer blood onto my trembling fingers. I ask the map, what shall I do with the sanguine ink you have bestowed upon me? The map replies, take it, this unending pain, and compose with it a song so stark, the masses might for a moment make a home of all I am mourning. There, where the land is bleeding, dig your hands into the earth. Look at the calamity of bone and flesh. Look at the way the blood escapes as though it is running from something. Force your eyes to look at all the ugly unafraid. Do not ask how the wound got there. Instead, back trail the crimson river until you arrive at the answer. This wound we fashion from silence and fear. This lesion we pick at that never heals. This gaping responsibility our trembling fingers and hearts can't seem to mend. Earth is ghetto. A barrio we don't feel safe walking in after dark. The White House is a trap, tiki torch porch lights, politicians peddling poison from the stoop, camouflage combat boots hanging from the power lines on Pennsylvania Ave, saltines scaling walls, can't tell between the cops and the robbers, they've always been one and the same. This is not who we are, and I agree, this is not who we are, this is who you are. The tale of two countries under one bloody flag, fighting for freedom is futile. We're too magic for this shit. So beam us up. We, the people of the sun, everything we wish to take is already inside of us. We'll be standing atop Chaco and Teotihuacan and Giza and Angkor Wat ready to fly. Earth is ghetto. I want to leave. 1. The hand tells the gun, I am boss. The gun answers the hand, aim wisely. The gun tells the bullet, prepare yourself. The bullet answers the gun, I'm afraid. The bullet tells the target, I am sorry. The target answers the bullet, I know. The target tells the blood, don't leave me. The blood answers the target, I must. The blood asks society, how much more do you want? Society answers the blood. 2. In the distance, prayers ring out. God bless the hand. God bless the gun. God bless the bullet. God bless the target. God bless the blood. God bless the United States of America. Prayers stay the same. Policy never changes. We, the black and brown boys and girls, the black and brown men and women, the ones whose history is embedded in their skin, he who has warrior carved into his heart, she who carries civilizations inside her cosmos, there are all these bodies, these kingdoms of bone and flesh, these places our children call home, sacred soils where bullets are forcefully interred, memorials sprouting where rooted flowers should be. And we, the living, we cast our voices like nets into the shadows, rain falling upon our grieving faces, masking our tears. We howl in unison like wolves at the moon, fangs showing beneath our trembling lips. Our hearts dance like pop bottle rockets inside of us, the knots tying our stomachs, unable to be unraveled. Still, somehow, we find a way to lick each other's wounds. We pray because it's more constructive than setting fires. Hands clasped keep them from balling into fists. We sing because we're tired of shouting curses. We build because we're tired of being destroyed. We march because we're tired of being walked on. We evolve into new things because we're tired of trying to convince them that we are human. The gun says, my voice has become the fire echo of ill will's evil laughter. My kiss, a starved flesh-eating epidemic. Everything I touch, I turn to tombstones. Point blank, I can coax the life right out of you. I cannot tell you how it feels to live in this body, the violence that calls the barrel of this hollow chest home. My mind is a firecracker, a disembodied hard drive filled with nothing but obituaries. One learns a lot about a person when they confuse you for their God. I know too much about the dead. Sometimes I wish I could crawl out of this steel frame I call skin, rid my throat of the taste of sulfur and smoke. I am tired of saying I am sorry, broke from tossing all my pennies into wishing wells. I am less dangerous when disassembled. It is hard to remain intact when you were designed to explode. There are so many triggers that set me off. Mama said there would be days like these. And when there are, I recite the prayer she taught me. Newton's first law of motion states that an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted on by an unbalanced force. An object at rest will remain at rest unless acted on by an unbalanced force. I am a marionette dangling in the unbalanced bloody hands of man. Blame his calloused heart, the itch on his index finger, his obsession with taking things that don't belong to him. I am obedient, a soldier taking orders, a domino falling into place, a puppet built without a voice box. It's your hate speech that detonates from my mouth. Do you know what it feels like to be loaded against your will? To have your life revolve around crimes you never wanted to commit in the first place? This burden is as heavy as the lead I've tried holding back with nothing but my conscience. All I want is a second chance, not another shot. It is the shooting that has left me in shambles. Silly humans, when will you realize that you do not have to fill bodies with holes to see the light innately shining through them? Today, my love, let the crackle of the world burning outside our door be the music we slow dance to. Let us unclench our fists to make space for each other's hands. Run with me until we no longer see the smoke. When we arrive at this imaginary place, there where nothing else is, we will experience a beautiful fiction. There, let me taste the warmth of the sun's rays on your lips. Let me float lazily like driftwood, losing myself along the river in your eyes as the butterflies flutter and the hummingbirds hum. Let me braid honeysuckles into your hair. May the songbirds serenade us while the peacocks prance. When the sun takes its daily bow, let us try and force it an encore. For in the distance, the flames are still flickering, the bullets are still flying, and soon, my love, we will smell the smoke. But love is an untamable wind blowing where it may, and we are merely dust dancing upon its breeze. Love is a veil removed, a naked heart beautifully bloodied, with borders transcended. That which is vast does not fear confinement. Love is swallowing the ocean and finding freedom in drowning. Just after dawn, as the sun spills in and paints the space in spring, the soft silhouette of her golden body sits in surrender like the hills of a rolling desert, and I, a parched man, walk across the infinite bend of her sands. Her lips, a seductive mirage, her kiss, the only water capable of quenching this thirst. Blessed be that body, the body that makes a home of the heart, that stubborn anchor that renders buoyant both beauty and love, that indubitable force that makes a mess of us. In our embodied disarray, let us be loyal to the gorgeous calamity of our own choice. Let us bathe in the euphoric misery of a life frowningly fugacious. Let us dance upon this incredible nightmare until our feet blister and morning comes. And if this moment is all there is, let us fashion from it something marvelous. Let us drink from its mouth until we become intoxicated. Let us stumble into the euphoria and ecstasy of the now. The mundane is an enemy of the magical. Humdrum, a murder of the mystical. Tomorrow is a masked stranger standing somewhere in the dark, but today is that hummingbird floating. It is the alchemy of lips transmuting love. It is the sun cartwheeling against the sky, begging you to see yourself as celestial. Heaven, a body at work, and nothing more. And when this body becomes too weary to carry the life inside of it, take the lumber of my remains and build a shrine. Of my bones, construct the altar, unearth the heirlooms buried underneath my tongue and melt them into glass cylinders. From my memories, braid a wick and light it. Mix my blood with earth, sand, and sticks. Mold me into adobe bricks and let me harden in the sun. Make walls of me. Cut the tattoos from my flesh to decorate the stucco. Of my veins, weave a walkway that leads to a garden. Scatter my dust where the roses grow. Sit with me in times of blooming, but pluck me like fruit when it is time. Take my teeth and place them inside a hollowed out gourd. When you miss my voice, shake the rattle and dance to my song. Use clay to make a mold of my lips. Fashion it into a cup you can kiss when you thirst for me. When you are left with nothing but my organs, wrap them inside my favorite shirt and then bury me beneath a tree. As for my heart, that has always belonged to you, do with it as you wish. In the land of my forefathers, The sun kisses the piñon trees so tenderly they glimmer emerald in the distance. The earth and the chile are red. My body remembers things I have yet to learn. The adobe has become a caricature of itself. Turquoise gags as the white woman fetishizes the neo-colonial theft around her neck. Anyway, Wilford runs a cantina. He asks me about myself and then talks shit. We laugh and drink in his time capsule in Chimayo. The bar is bare but lived in. A broken jukebox collects dust like a love story, like a broken heart. He says, God bless you as I leave. I think about it. I still take my hat off upon entering the capilla. Ignore the holy water beckoning me from the font. I can't tell you the last time I convinced my fingers to make the sign of the cross. The retablo upon the altar is beautiful, though. The colors of colonization always pop. There is a war inside my blood. The struggle of land and people and politics as pronounced as the smile that always seems to bring me to tears. This is my last poem, Susie. The doors entering the Santuario at Chimayo are heavy and made of wood. Heavy and made of wood like a cross. A cross holding the crucified hangs upon the altar. The altar is intricately painted and is made of wood. Wood is also what the pews were carved from. In the pews, there is an elder clutching a crucifix, 59 beads rotating with purpose between pointer finger and thumb. The Lord's Prayer leaves his lips rhythmically in Spanish like a song. The echo of his baritone bounces across the thick, cold adobe. His eyes are sealed shut as if he's trying to see something, sealed shut as if he's trying to forget. Faith is a beautiful paradox, the way it professes certainty without proof, the way it suggests flight without wings. I watch the fearing genuflect and braid their hands into willful submission. I watch them root their ritual in elemental things, water, fire, dirt, all things you can see. Faith hangs from the hearts of men like an aberrant piece of art I admire from afar but can never get myself to buy. How beautiful it is to browse, though. Appreciation dripping from my heart like the wax of the Holy Spirit burning upon the tabernacle. Thank you.
Bobby, those poems were beautiful and fiery. And I had a strong sense that you were going to make me cry. And I was not wrong. So it's fine. I almost put on more eye makeup before coming on camera. And then I paused. I said, no, wait. My heart is already my heart. And I'm going to be with the poets. And so I already know. If you've checked out a Margins and Meats before, you know I'll be crying on camera. It's and it has been a particular week. So the tears were not a surprise, but I'm so grateful to be in your presence and in your company, Bobby and Tanaya, with your poems. And I'm really, really looking forward to being in conversation with you as well. So now I'm going to introduce to you our next reader. Our next author is Tanaya Winder, who's an author, singer, songwriter, and motivational speaker who comes from an intertribal lineage of Southern Ute, Pyramid Lake Paiute, and Duckwater Shoshone nations, where she is an enrolled citizen. Winder co-founded As Us, a space for women of the world, a literary magazine publishing works by BIPOC women. She holds a BA in English from Stanford University and an MFA in creative writing from the University of New Mexico. Winder's poetry collections include Words Like Love and Why Storms Are Named After People and Bullets Remain Nameless. Her specialties include youth and women empowerment, healing trauma through art, creative writing workshops, and mental wellness advocacy. Winder's performance and talks blend storytelling, singing, and spoken word to teach about different expressions of love and hard work. And now, without further ado, please welcome Tanaya.
Hey, so honored to be here with you both today. Two poets I really admire, look up to, have a lot of respect for. So thank you for bringing me into this space.
Thank you for saying yes. I'm so looking forward to hearing your poems.
Thank you. So the first poem I'm going to read comes from my book, Words Like Love. This is a poem about my grandmother. I always like to call her into this space whenever I read, so I'll typically start with this poem. And it's about just my relationship with my indigenous language, with Shoshone, with trying to reclaim what was stolen from me. And this poem is called Learning to Say I Love You. My favorite conversations are with my grandmother while she teaches me words in Indian, as she says. I ask, how do you say, where did you go? And where are you going? Questions that layer my tongue in ash, reminding me of fire, the taste. Each time I speak, the slow burn of every loss I have witnessed cracks my lips, go and going, axe singed into my bones, so I ask, teach me, I'm coming with you. So it sits rock heavy in my mouth, because my tongue is at war with history. Boarding school, kill the Indian, save the man. Acts of colonization strain my pronunciation when I want to say, take me with you. It dissolves. Before I can stomach the sweetness of language hours, I am losing. I am lost, lodged somewhere in my throat between decades of broken syllables. Teach me how to reach the ones who are born already running. Teach me how to talk to the ones who need it most. Dear universe, gift me words that linger softly like dusk. There must be a phrase to contain wherever you go, whether or not you know where you've been or where you are going. And I feel like a lot of my work really interrogates that because I came to poetry from a place of grieving and loss, and it's always just been that much needed medicine for me. I've always needed it for my survival. And those are just questions I think about, where did you go? Where are you going? Take me with you. And, in asking a lot of these questions, I think with starting with my grandma, I always then like to share a poem that I wrote for some of the youth that I work with. And this came from a time I was doing a poetry residency on a reservation in Minnesota. And I always just like to give the prompts, like, if you could have any superhero power, what would it be and why? And this was the first time every girl wrote invisibility. And so a poem came from that experience. And this poem is called Love Lessons in a Time of Settler Colonialism. And it has an epigraph by First Nations educator, artist, activist Leanne Simpson. And her quote is, I am not murdered and I am not missing, but parts of me have been disappeared. They too know all too well that some cracks were built just for us to fall through. We live in a world that tries to steal spirits each day. They steal ours by taking us away. From industrial schools to forced assimilation, genocide means removal of those who birth nations. Our living threatens. Colonization has been choking us for generations. I tell my girls, they are vessels of spirit, air to lungs expanding. This world cannot breathe without us. There are days I wish I didn't have to teach these lessons, but as an Indigenous woman, silence is deadening. There is danger in being seen. Our bodies are targets marked for violence. We carry the earth's Me Too inside us. A howling wind, our mothers and their mothers swallowed these bullets long ago. The voices ricochet. I wish I were invisible. I wish I were invisible. I wish echoes in my eardrums. We know what it's like to live in fear. Colonialism's bullet sits cocked, waiting behind a finger on trigger. We breathe and speak and sing for survival. We carve out in lines. We write, I know joy, I know pain, I know love. I know love, I know lessons we've carried throughout time. Should I go missing? Don't stop searching. Drag every river until it turns red and the waters of our names stretch a flood so wide it catches everything. And we find each other, whole and sacred, alive and breathing and breathing and breathing. This next poem I'm going to read just comes from and thinking about just healing and writing to heal and healing ourselves. And in that last poem, a lot of the extraction, our children being extracted from communities and reservations during boarding schools, and then our natural resources being extracted still to this day, and the effects that that has on Earth, and as women being connected to Mother Earth in such a powerful way. And in thinking about our alignment with the earth, sometimes people plant themselves in us and take our nutrients, and it's not a reciprocal relationship, and how that can be unhealthy and toxic sometimes. So this poem is a reflection on that, and it comes from the Why Storms Are Named After People and Bullets Remain Nameless. And this is called Like Any Good Indian Woman. I pull my brothers from words, stupid engine shot like bullets. When people ask why my brothers hated school, I say, the spirit remembers what it's like to be left behind. When America took children from homes, displaced families with rupture, ripping a child's hand from a mother's to put them in boarding school buildings. My brothers are mourning a loss they try to fix in finding home in another person. So they travel from reservation to city, singing blues and 49 songs about love. I pull my brothers from cars named after Indians, Navajo, Cherokee, and Tacoma. On a danger-destined road, my brothers are born longing from a way back from relocation and long walks across miles and miles and miles of removal. My brothers search for themselves in unhealthy addictions disguised as makeshift bandages. I pull my brothers from bottles they think answers might be hidden at the bottom of. My brothers stumble through back alleys looking for a love and laughter that was stolen from them like the land. And when their brown bodies try to find healing and love, other brown bodies cringe at their touch because, like any good Indian woman, our bodies are connected to an earth still being raped by the pipelines forcibly laid down inside all that we hold sacred. And my brothers hold on to their colonial emotional baggage so tightly they think it's gravity. So I pull my brothers from oceans, believing they deserve the hurt so much they nearly drown themselves in it. And sometimes my brothers knife ancestral grieving onto their wrists, slits to remember the only time we are ever red-skinned is when blood flows from the open wounds America knifed onto our brown skin. Self-love, apply pressure. I pull my brothers from ashes. America tried to burn us, not knowing we were already flame. And these will be the stories I tell my grandchildren when one day they ask me why being a good Indian woman means we burn like phoenix, repeatedly pulling our brothers. And so this next poem is called Becoming a Ghost. Ask me about the time my brother ran towards the sun, arms outstretched. His shadow chased him from corner store to church where he offered himself in pieces. Ask me about the time my brother disappeared. At 16, tossed his heartstrings over telephone wire, dangling for all the res dogs to feed on. Bit by bit, the world took chunks of my brother's flesh. Ask me about the first time we drowned in history. 8 years old, during communion, we ate the body of Christ with palms wide open, not expecting wine to be poured into our mouths. The bitterness buried itself in my tongue, and my brother never quite lost his thirst for blood, or vanishing for more days than his shadow could hold. Ask me if I've ever had to use bottle caps as breadcrumbs to help my brother find his way back home. He never could tell the taste between a scar and its wounding, an angel or demon. Ask me if I can still hear his exhaled prayers. I am still waiting to be found. To be found, tell me why there is nothing more holy than becoming a ghost. And this last poem I'll read, it is from my experiences just as a child with my family. One of my aunts really loved listening to like Guns N' Roses or Journey. And so, we would each have a song, like a Journey song that was like, okay, this is your theme song, your theme song. And so that works its way into the poem. So when you hear me say Journey, I do mean the music group. So it's called Uncharted Territory of Grief. Summers meant sticking my arm out the back of a res car. No other windows rolled down. Consequences of a mechanic, some stranger's calloused hands left us with sticky summers, sweat dripping from our foreheads. I waved to make-believe friends and hungry ghosts. My arms danced against the wind, taking comfort in the resistance of warm desert air. The ghosts sang along as Journey's keys and bass blared through a battery-powered boombox. The car hugged the highway curves like a child holding its mom's hand, afraid to walk alone in the dark. Our grandmothers told us stories of the desert, how giant serpents laid on mountains to create canyons. Imagine earth crunching under the weight of unbearable sadness. Imagine what it feels like to collapse into an uncharted territory of grief. As young girls, we learned the tale of a mother who cried so many tears she created a lake in the middle of the desert. Today, she sits in stone beneath a star-stitched sky, holding up the otherwise untethered blue. Last month, I read an orca gave birth to a female calf who died 30 minutes after entering our world. The orca carried her dead calf for 17 days. Tethered by grief, hers the price paid for love and loving. At 34, my sister gives birth to her first child, a winter-born boy. In recovery, my sister asks if she can walk yet. Her nurse says, wait until your legs are yours again. I wonder who and what I've carried and carry for days, months, years, grandmother. Take me back to your childhood where you sang Blue Moon in boarding school, where you won the talent show. Take me back to 17 when my back first curved into an S, the serpent inside me coiled under grief, my scoliosis stopping any sports outside of prayers and inside dreams. I wish we'd had more time. Take me back to the day my fingers learned the blues until chords calloused their tips, the electric progression of Ain't Got No Home etched into my body's memory. Take me back to when we were all children given songs to sing, the ones you proclaimed were anthems, predictions for how we would love. Take me back to when we were all children saying, let's pretend. We'd yet to swim through grief. Our spirits hadn't been crushed by fists breaking through bedroom walls, and I could still hold your hand in the dark. Let's pretend our ghosts have been fed. Let's make believe our hearts are ours so we can walk again. Reverse the journey. Play back the boombox. Rewind the cassette tape to our favorite part, where we all sing along to the na-na-na-na-na-nas until my lungs can remember what it's like to breathe in a world where you are still here and I am still waving at ghosts through the back window singing, now it's your turn, girl, to cry. Thank you.
Oh, the weaving in that poem. I mean, astounding, beautiful, beautiful work. Thank you so much for your poems, Tanaya. I'm going to welcome back Bobby as well, so the three of us can chat. And I'm just so grateful. I've been over here crying in a corner, and I thank you for that. I think crying in a corner is important medicine, as is poetry. And thank you for sharing yours with us tonight. I want to ask you both about some of your approaches to your work. One thing that I know about both of you and why I wanted to have you in conversation is that you both work across so many disciplines, right? And find so many different avenues for your voices and to share stories. And so poetry is one avenue, and even the ways that you share poetry, like both of you work in a lot of different media and a lot of different genres in that way. Can you tell me more about how you came to poetry and like which was your first love?
Do you want to go first, Bobby?
Sure, I could go. I say this a lot because I think it's important. I came to poetry through theater. So theater and acting is actually my first love. And I found poetry through the written word of playwriting and, studying mostly Black and brown playwrights that were writing in the 60s and 70s that, we know things like hip hop, were evolutions of these poetic sort of histories. And so I loved theater first, and it's my first love. And I once I found poetry, though, it felt a whole lot more accessible to me. Like when I started reading more, when I started writing more, when I started observing more, I just really enjoyed that process. But I always credit theater and hip hop culture really to my entry points into poetry.
Yeah, I low key wanted to be a theater kid, so I wish I had been more brave to do that. But for me, like I had mentioned, it was through grief. I had lost a grandfather of mine unexpectedly, so I dropped out of school. And when I wanted to go back to school, the principal was like, only if you could get a teacher to let you in that late in the semester. And the only teacher willing to let me in was my English teacher. He was teaching a spoken word class that semester, and I've always been shy and awkward. I'm like, I don't know if I could do that because like the final's supposed to be a slam, but I did it, and poetry just became that safe space for me to grieve and emote and feel, and it became that lifeline. And I always think it'd be cool if I'm like, and I won that poetry slam, so I knew I was gonna be a poet, but I didn't even place or make it to the next round. Actually, I think I never slammed again after that, but I just loved the way that poetry made me feel like I could stand in my power, and poetry's been one of my favorite mediums ever since.
Thank you both so much. So, Tanay, I know that you're also a singer-songwriter and you have a new book of poems coming out. Is that true? Can you tell us a little bit more about this new collection?
Yeah, so I have a contract with the University of New Mexico Press. They actually republished my first book, Words Like Love. It used to have a different cover and was first published by West End Press. And so part of that contract was republishing that book and my next collection, which is going to be called When the Stars Fall from the Sky. And it's really going to be just about my grandmother and her life and navigating boarding school and just the gentleness and love that she emerged from that place with, that lives in me and all of my family that came through her. It's still early in its process, so I'm not sure when it will be out, but um, yeah, just trying to make space to write for that. And yeah, music, for me, I really feel like I grew up in ceremony singing songs. That's when my spirit feels most alive. And if I had been braver, like I probably would have studied performance art in school instead of English. And I finally just feel like I made my way back to it, back to making music. I love that Bobby has a guitar back there. I have some of my guitars too, but yeah, just as a different way of expressing. I feel like my soul speaks more when I'm singing than when I'm reading poetry.
That is so interesting. Like, oh, I have so many thoughts on this, but we're not talking about me right now. We're going to talk about Bobby. Um, Bobby, you also work across so many disciplines, right? So you mentioned theater being your first love, but I've seen you work in theater both on and off stage, right? As a writer, as a director, as a producer, and as an actor. So can you tell me like how that evolution has been for you and what's your favorite role right now in theater? Like where do you see yourself moving?
Yeah, it's every job's so different, and I think there you get different things from them as the actor. You're the vessel for the word and the story. And there's a great roundtable that I would suggest everybody watch. You could just probably YouTube is acting art, and they brought a bunch of actors together to have a conversation around whether or not the actor is an artist or if the actor is basically just an interpreter. And so there's a really robust conversation around whether or not the art of acting is truly an art, because you're seemingly taking something that belongs to someone else and just sort of delivering it. But they talk a lot about process. And, I'm very process driven. So I couldn't care less about what happens at the end of anything I ever do, really. It's all about what's happening in the moment. And as an actor, the discovery happens in that process, in rehearsal, in learning, what the cast feels like as an ensemble. And that's where the magic is. And, when you're producing something, it's usually because you have a large vision, right? So when I'm producing something, it's because I see people and a team in mind that I want to bring together to do something beautiful. And you can create those worlds when you have the ability to, and have access to make something in that way, to be the organizer. I always tell folks, like, as an artist, I'm super creative and can live in this kind of wild space of exploration. But as a producer and as somebody who's also very, pragmatic in some ways and very organized in others, those things occupy very different pieces of my being. As a director, you have the opportunity to take those pieces and to kind of give them life, and that's really, really important. And so right now, I think where I'm at is, I want to continue to write for the theater, because I think that we still need our stories. I think, and what's so beautiful about what we're doing here tonight is I just sit here and I'm listening to you all and to these poems, and we forget that sometimes when we're in these circles that are sacred and that our homies are in, and that we're doing this beautiful work, that's not always celebrated outside of these smaller circles. So there's still a need to, like, put work into the world that can live after us. And so in regard to theater, I would say that I'm most interested in writing, and I'm the type of person that kind of disappears for a minute and then I just come back and poof, I've got something. So I'm disappearing right now, but give me a little bit of time and poof, we'll have something.
I really don't see you disappearing, because I see you, like, regularly publishing poetry for the people on Instagram, right? So if you're not following Bobby LeFebree on Instagram, get some poetry in your life, follow Bobby. Like, giving people instantly, like, your ability to create something and respond to whatever people are feeling right in that moment is incredible. And also, I think you're a wonderful steward in your role as Colorado's poet laureate. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that experience has been like for you? Like, what did you expect the laureateship to be like, and how's it been?
Yeah, I don't know what I expected it to be like. I know that it's been something that's existed. Our previous poet laureate was a professor of mine at one point, so I studied poetry with the previous poet laureate, and it's really just been me doing what I always do, just in, with a little bit more of a bend on, like, really caring about a global audience, making sure that I'm available as that steward, is that that representation of poetry, and really trying to serve in a way that makes people feel seen. I think in the bio or whatever, in 100 years, there hasn't been, a single person of color in that position, a single young person in that position. So really what I'm trying to do is amplify our voices, our collective voices, the voices of folks on the margins, right? And all of my projects are doing that. They're centering our voices very intentionally. I'm not excluding anyone. I'm just amplifying us. And I love the ability to do that. And I think anytime that we're in positions of influence or power, we need to, do those things in a very intentional way, to call attention to us and to celebrate us and to show our complexity. And that's been my major goal in this time. And I'll be here till July of next year. So until then, that's what I'll be doing.
Are you going to re-up after, or what does that mean?
There's conversations. I don't think I'm interested in it for a couple of reasons. One, 4 years is a long time. It's a whole ass presidential term. It's a whole ass, I feel like an elected official in that way. And to be honest with you, my vision for the position is that we move as many people into it as possible, so we hear from diverse people and we see what they do with it. I don't want to gatekeep. I don't want to stay in a position longer than I need to. I would rather give that seat up to the next person to see what they can do, and to have us learn from someone new.
Thank you, Bobby. I think that's wise. Um, and I also love what you've done with the role. So I'm very glad that you're in the position that you are,
Thank
and that
you.
you're doing that you are who you are, and then I get to be your friend. I love that. Brings me joy. I think that sometimes I do forget that everyone does not have beautiful people like you all in their lives, and like don't even know like that this world is possible. The world that you all create with your words, and it's so normal for me to get to have this. When I think about the role of the poet, and particularly like in a moment like right now, and last week, and probably the week before, right? We're a nation experiencing a lot of grief. And today you mentioned how grief really brought you into poetry. When you think about your role as a poet and your work as a poet and your work as an educator, your work as an organizer, right? You both do so many things. I wonder, like, who do you envision, who do you hope is receiving your work? Who is it for?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's just mostly I write for my people. I write for, I've spent a great deal of my life just working directly with youth and just wanting them to feel seen in the world. And it's interesting just the way I love how things resonate. If I'm writing something for a particular person in mind who I know is struggling, and then to have like an elder relate to it or have it resonate with them. And I think honestly, I feel like writing too is just the only place I can feel like I've had most of my life has been in these leadership roles where I have to have my stuff together, and I feel like I have to be strong, like I have to be calm and collected. I feel like I'm not able to, I guess, feel everything, all of my like rage and emotions and sadness in those roles sometimes. And though I know it is appropriate to feel and in that way, like maybe create space and permission for other people to feel, but just the way I was raised and all of those things that I guess still stay with me. Like if you're a woman in a professional setting, like don't be the person crying at the office, all of those things I feel like are still inside of me. And poetry is just really only that, and songwriting is only that safe space where I can feel everything I need to feel and let it out. And so I feel like a lot of my work I have in mind is just for people who need also that processing space, and people who need to find that healing or that medicine.
Thank you. And also, Tanea, so Celeste has a question around your process too. So, what is your creative process like for music? And are there any similarities in what inspires your poetry or writing?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I write, and I'll be curious to hear what Bobby's process is too, or yours, Susie. But I feel like I just write so chaotically. I feel like it's just like a download that I get, and then it comes out. Sometimes for me, I think it's just my personality too. I'm not good at having surface conversations. Like I just go deep really quickly, and so in the same way, like with poetry, like I have that same like deep relationship. I'll like pray or smudge before I write because it's that sacred and ceremonial to me. Um, and sometimes it just starts with a feeling, or with guitar, I just find some chords I like, and then I'll just be humming along. I'll find the melody. And sometimes it's like, oh, I wrote a poem that can actually go with this. So sometimes I write something that I think is going to be a poem, it becomes a song, and something that I think is going to be a song lyric ends up going into a poem. I feel like it's very fluid to me. I'm still young in my songwriting and music career. And yeah, there's no set way or set path, but when it happens just really quickly at the first draft. If I'm having to force it, knock on wood, I thankfully have been pretty blessed to not have to force myself to write. But when it flows through me, just ask to be that empty vessel to let it flow through me, and then I figure out which medium it's going to be later on.
Yeah. So that answer comes for you later. You're not necessarily sure about what you're making until you start making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine is similar in that way that I also don't always know the difference. I think I've been hearing my entire life from different people, like when I'm performing poetry and they say, oh, that sounds like hip hop. And then when I'm performing what I think is hip hop, they're like, oh, that sounds like poetry. And so my only answer is like, Bet. I don't really care what you call it, right? Also, a lot of my poems have songs in them. It's just like I don't understand these definitions don't really serve me or the work. So do whatever. I don't know. It's just like I'm doing this work. What about you, Bobby? What's your process look like?
Yeah, I try to write every day, but that doesn't. It's like I don't. It's like whatever. I usually it starts with a connection of two things. Like usually it's the way that I see, and I think so much of being a writer is that it's not only what you make, but it's how you see. And I think that is. I've made a life out of looking at the world in that way. That you're talking about in a very profound way. Like what lives beneath the thing that we are able to see right in front of us, like what's behind that, how did that thing get to be that thing, and whether that's making a connection between something in the natural world and something tangible in front of me, or an idea to an image. I do a lot of observing before I ever write, and so sometimes that happens in the mind, other times it happens in the real world. Sometimes it's the news, sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's an emotion. But then I just kind of let it happen. I also don't fear writer's block. I don't believe in it. It's just a period of time I'm not writing, right? So if I don't write another poem in the next 5 years, it doesn't change my approach to life, which I think also is poetry in the way that we live and the way that we see. So I let it happen when it happens, and when it doesn't happen, I take in other people's work and art, and that always influences me. So if I'm having a quiet period, I'll go to the homies' art shows or their music shows, and that usually fuels me too, to see other people being creative and living in the way that they know how, and that influences me also to want to get back to do whatever it is I'm doing creatively.
Yes, I love that, Bobby, because that brings me to the next question I want to ask you both. Um, we talk about other people's arts. I want to know what is your dream collaboration? You can work with anybody, anywhere, from any period of time. Uh, what's your dream collaboration project or squad, or both?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I feel like, yeah. I feel like I've been born before my time. I would love to just like collab with my ancestors and just be able to like just if I go back there, I like know the language. I'm like, let's write all these books right now. I'll take them with me to the future. But I'm thinking like coming to mind is like Ella Fitzgerald. Like I love music from that time. I feel like I feel like part of my soul is a singer from back in those days. I would love to just collaborate, write some soulful music.
Yeah, I would have like I'd like form like Wu-Tang, I'd have a big ass squad of just like incredible people, revolutionaries, artists, ancestors, lovers. Like I would just have a big open space where all these people come together and see what happens. And in some ways, we do that, like the folks I've been able to work with locally, nationally, even internationally. When you bring incredible people together and just see what happens, it's my favorite thing in the world. Like I love just building with people that are creative, and had many a night of just like watching things emerge, and so yeah, I don't know. It would be quite the squad. I give me some time. I'll get back to everybody. I'll assemble the squad.
I love it. I think that's also one of the things like I really enjoy and I'm so inspired by. There's so many incredible people making art right now, and who I get to know, and it's just always feels so magical to me. And I think that there's like this part of me that wants to like create a residency where we all just show up and collab for like months on end, just make it together.
Let's do it.
That's the future. So speaking of the future, what are you excited about? What are you working on now?
Ooh, always working on something. I feel like too many things. I got to get better at saying no. But I'm working on that poetry collection. I'm trying to also work on a young adult novel in verse. But the main thing right now is I'm doing my first full album. I have this awesome audio engineer who lives in Longmont, and he's just phenomenal. Like I'm not like the best at the guitar, but I just know some chords, and I'll just give him my chords and record how I'm thinking it should sound, and he's just like, what about this? And he's just so good at like interpreting it, and like, yeah, so I'm excited for that. Hopefully we'll be releasing it by the end of the year.
I love that. I can't to hear it.
That's dope. I'm working on a couple things for the stage right now. One is a one-person show. I haven't done that in a long time, so I'm writing the shit out of this one-person show that's been kind of in development for a couple of years now. Kind of getting through that. Another play or two, and I also have a new idea. Like my next large-scale project it's being teased out. I just applied for a grant, and I'm working toward an idea that I think will be pretty fresh and kind of cool. Let's talk about it, because maybe if I don't talk about it, I won't do it. So what I'm planning to do is I want to buy an old school bus or passenger van, and I want to create a mobile poetry experience, like a spectacle. So we could take poetry into the hood or into, wherever we go, and we showcase people. It'll be a bookstore, it'll be a performance space, a workshop space, a projection space. So we could both like project poems onto buildings. We can amplify poems via sound. And this is all just brand new. But I hope within the next year I could develop this some way and, get some money to do it. And I think it'd be really, really special to be able to pop up and have, parties and poetry events and shows and music and all these things, and just be mobile with it. Take it to the youth and take it to the hood, and take poetry into places where maybe it wouldn't be on a Friday or Saturday night, and kind of see what happens as a big community experience.
Let's get into it. I'm excited. So for those of you watching at home, if this is a project you want to support, you can reach Bobby through that contact page at bobbylefebree.com. Hey.
Love it.
Bobby's Magic School Bus. I love that. So that's
I'm down in any way I could support. Let me know. Well, thank you both so very much for making some time. I want to see, audience, if you have any last questions, now is the time. But I want to know also, so when you're thinking about your work and what you're most proud of creating, I want to know either or. I'll give you a couple of options. I love knowing these things. And I think you'll both have a lot of answers. And I think many answers is fine too. When you think about the work that you've created that you're most proud of, if it had a soundtrack, who's on it? If it had a meal pairing, what are you serving with this dish? And then we're going to send the folks into their dinner tonight, right? This is the...
I'll let you lead. Let's go ahead. What is it? What's it sound like? What's it taste like?
I don't know if I know the soundtrack specifically, but I low-key want to write a musical one day. I love musical theater. That was my original dream, was being on Broadway. So the soundtrack is a musical soundtrack, so it can annoy all my family who hate musicals. And the food is just like grilling in the backyard food, like burgers, hot dogs, even though they don't have good things inside them, potato salad, things like that. Makes me think of home.
Yeah. I'll share with this group maybe a link, but I actually got to do this. So me and my homie DJ Chones, when I was developing my play, I wanted the soundtrack to be like literally, like I wanted it to sound like this was the exercise. And so we created a playlist of probably 100 mostly hip hop songs, and we created like the dopest soundtrack ever. And then we used that as the soundtrack to the play. So I'll share that playlist with y'all at some point, but it sounds like that. It sounds like the music that raised me. And then I think it would taste like same home. Like it would taste like my mom's, green chile, her potatoes, the stuff we eat, for special occasions. or every time we're together. That's what it would taste like. It would taste like home. That's what it should taste like.
I love that. I want to hear this playlist, Bobby, so please
I'll
share
send
it.
it to you. I will.
And Tanaya, if you make a playlist of musicals that feel like this work, please share it with us. And I can add it to the comments later. So, because I'll still be able to have access. Thank you both so very, very much for taking some time to share poems with us, for being balm, for connecting us back into our hearts, which I think is some of the most important work there is to do in the times in which we live. So, again, everyone watching at home, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching later, be sure to check out the work of these poets and support their work. We can build a beautiful world when we do it together. So, thank you again for your time. And we will see you at the next Margins Meets event. I have been Susie Q. Smith, your host, and thank you for tuning in.